You hear the sound of distant bells, but you're not in a church. You're in a dark archive where time seems to have stopped. The stone walls hide more than dust. They hide secrets. And today, you're going to uncover one of them. Because in the underground chambers of the Vatican, behind sealed shelves and forbidden scrolls, lies a manuscript, a forgotten document, rejected, erased from official history. In it, Pope Leo XIV describes a vision, a scorching prophecy involving two nations locked in constant tension, Iran and Israel. But how can the name Leo XIV sound so unfamiliar to you, if he was the most feared pope of recent ages? The answer is simple. The world was never ready for him. Leo XIV was no ordinary pope. His gaze pierced through crowds, his silence wounded more than words. And his faith, unlike that of those around him, was not subject to politics, but to the Spirit. It was on September 29th, 2029, a date few associate with the Feast of the Archangels, that he locked the doors of the Apostolic Library and wrote, with his own hands, the so-called Letter of Black Dew. The name was no accident. He said the dew turned black wherever the fire of heaven would touch the earth. The content of that letter remained hidden until 2044, when an exiled Ethiopian monk leaked part of the text to an obscure French newspaper. Most dismissed it as a conspiracy theory, but the prophecy began knocking at the door. In it, Leo XIV spoke of a rise of moons against the star, of a time when Iran, the land of the crescent, would join with invisible forces to strike Jerusalem, not only militarily but spiritually. He foresaw that the attack wouldn't come only with missiles, but with a narrative that would shatter Israel's identity from within. The war will not be with swords nor tanks, but with the rewriting of the sacred past. Archives will be violated, ancient scrolls will be challenged, and the chosen people will be forced to choose between tradition and peace. That was the part that most alarmed the cardinals of the time, not because of the forecasted conflict, but because it implied that the Vatican itself might become complicit by allowing millennia-old documents to be reinterpreted, stripping Israel of its prophetic origin. Leo XIII wept while writing the final lines. Witnesses say his face resembled that of a man who had seen the end of times, but with eyes full of hope, because he also spoke of resistance, of a group, of a flame. There will be a remnant, a small people. They will be persecuted from every side, but they will keep the seals. And when the sky bleeds over the Mount of Olives, their voice will be heard, and the Lamb will answer. Do you feel the tension between the lines? This prophecy isn't just about distant wars. It speaks of manipulation, of faith being hijacked, of a truth on the verge of being buried under official narratives. And maybe it speaks of you, because if this letter has reached you, then maybe you are part of the remnant. The paper was yellowed, but what burned was the message. You hold the letter of black dew with trembling hands, not because of the document's age, but because of the invisible weight it carries. The words of Pope Leo XIV were not merely written, they were wept, as if he had torn open the viscera of history before time could mutilate it. And then you realize, he knew he would be silenced. Shortly after writing the letter, Leo XIV disappeared from public records for 7 days. Officially, he had retreated to Castel Gandolfo for spiritual retreat. But internal documents, revealed decades later by a dying cardinal, point to something else. The Pope was taken underground, against his will. Why? Because his visions threatened the fragile alliance between the Vatican and the lords of the new geopolitical order. The 21st century had transformed altars into podiums, and the saints' complicit silence gave way to the convenient speeches of faith diplomats. The prophecy about Iran and Israel was an inconvenience. But more than that, it was an accusation. In a redacted section, later restored using infrared technology, Leo XIV wrote, When the lion and the lamb are swapped in the stained glass of the temple, and the holy city trades its walls for peace treaties, the sons of Ishmael will rise clothed in gold, and their words will sound righteous, but will be laced with poison. Here the Pope seems to foretell not only a military conflict, but a moral and spiritual inversion. Iran, symbolizing the sons of Ishmael according to tradition, would not appear as the obvious villain. On the contrary, it would emerge as a champion of justice, of reconciliation, even of peace. But behind its eloquent speeches, a silent plan would unfold to redefine Israel's history, making it guilty of its own suffering. This shift in the prophecy shocked theologians and scholars alike, because rather than describing an apocalyptic war or another Holocaust, Leo XIV warned of an identity collapse, a spiritual genocide. A time would come when the Jews would be invited, not forced, to surrender their divine promises in exchange for inclusion, security, and prosperity. And many would accept. Leo XIV saw in this the prelude to the abomination. Can you feel the power in that? Can you see how this prophecy speaks directly to our age, where good and evil are shaped by algorithms, where Jerusalem's silence is worth more than her truth, and where alliances are forged between swords and crosses, but never with repentance? Once again, the letter speaks in a cryptic tone. Peace that denies the promise is a disguised curse, and those who accept it shall be as fig trees withered in winter. Kiev. Matthew 21:19. And now you understand why Leo XIV was persecuted. He didn't speak merely about politics. He spoke about idolatry disguised as diplomacy. He spoke of a world that would adore peace, even if it meant crucifying the truth to achieve it. And if he was right, then something is about to happen. And maybe you are being called not to watch, but to choose which side you will stand on. You hear footsteps echoing down the stone corridor. You are not alone. Something or someone also wants this prophecy revealed or destroyed. You quickly hide the manuscript beneath your cloak while the candles flicker, as if they too had heard the forbidden name, Leo XIV. But what makes this prophecy so dangerous? The answer lies in a nearly invisible symbol, hidden in the bottom corner of the letter, a seal. Not a papal crest, but something far older, a six-pointed star, split down the middle, encircled by a crescent moon, and pierced by a flaming sword. No cardinal could interpret it, but a rabbi from Jerusalem, secretly consulted by a dissident cleric, offered a chilling interpretation. This seal marks the end of the covenant. When the symbol of Israel is divided, when the crescent dominates the temple, when the sword touches the Holy of Holies, then the Messiah will come, but before him will come the false one. What Leo XIV foresaw was not just a political clash between Iran and Israel. He saw the preparation for the rise of the Antichrist. He wrote, "The one who unites East and West, who promises peace between the moon and the Star of David, will wear white robes, but his tongue will be forked. He will form alliances in the name of Abraham, but will reject the Son, and the kings of the earth will follow him." Though it is no coincidence that in recent years, world leaders have adopted that very discourse: Abrahamic unity, alliances among the three faiths, reconciliation between the descendants of Ishmael and Isaac. But is that really a good thing, or is it a trap, wearing the mask of light? You feel a knot in your stomach as you recall the Apostle Paul's warning. When they say peace and safety, then sudden destruction will come upon them. 1 Thessalonians 5:3. Leo XIV claimed this declaration would not come from the UN, but from the altar itself. He accused a future pope, unnamed, of being an accomplice to the false Messiah. A charismatic, progressive pontiff who would issue an encyclical calling all peoples into a new global faith, unified, tolerant, but without the Lamb, the final pope. And in this vision, Iran and Israel are no longer mere nations. They are archetypes, one representing a wounded past, the other a betrayed future, and between them an empty throne, ready to be filled. You begin to realize that this lost prophecy is not just a forecast. It is a denunciation, and at the same time, an invitation. The question is, will you ignore it, or will you investigate it to the end? The chill of the stone seeps into your bones, but what truly freezes your soul is what comes next. Hidden among the final pages of the letter of black dew is a handwritten appendix, inked in red, not for style but for urgency. Here Leo XIV sketches, with trembling hands, the map of a spiritual conspiracy connecting three centers: Tehran, Jerusalem, and Rome. Yes, Rome. Because according to the prophetic pope, what was being plotted between Iran and Israel would not only be tolerated by the Vatican, but facilitated by it. The betrayal will come from within. The document describes a web of invisible agreements signed between embassies, universities, and interfaith representatives, a network of diplomats and theologians working quietly toward the creation of a new spiritual paradigm, the humanist global religion. Its goal, to eliminate everything that divides, even the idea of a chosen people. Leo XIV wrote with tears, "Israel will be pressured to dissolve its promise. Iran will be exalted as an example of reconciliation. And Rome, oh Rome, will kiss the feet of the serpent to keep its throne standing." It's hard to believe. You want to dismiss it all as exaggeration. But then you remember the Interfaith Summit in Vienna in 2033, where a prominent cardinal quietly removed the name of Jesus from his speech in the name of universal inclusion. Or when Dead Sea Scrolls, reinterpreted by an Iranian university, were accepted into an international conference without biblical review, suggesting that the Hebrew patriarchs were just mythical figures shared by various cultures. What was once heresy is now diplomacy. The letter continues. What could not be conquered with crusades will be delivered with signatures. And when truth is filed, stamped, and erased, those who cry out in the streets will be called radicals, but heaven will still hear them. That last phrase is mysterious. It suggests that even amid corruption, there will be voices, there will be resistance, there will be fire. But the cost will be high, because those who denounce this profane alliance will be persecuted, silenced, or worse, branded as fundamentalists. Do you understand now? This prophecy is not just a warning, it is a spiritual battleground. Iran and Israel are the visible stage, Rome is the hidden backstage, and you may be called to be a watchman. Because if everything Leo XIV wrote is coming true, then the time for silence is over. You close your eyes for a moment. But the words of Leo XIV remain seared in your mind, like fire branded onto stone. The solitary pope, the forgotten prophet, the man who dared to write against the very machine of institutional faith. The red chapter of the prophecy begins now. Inside an envelope, hidden behind the final page of the letter of black dew, there was another manuscript, smaller, personal, a message addressed to someone he called the keeper of the broken keys. No name, no date, only symbols, and a phrase that changes everything. The final attack will not be against bodies, but against memories. History will be reprogrammed. The temple will be rebuilt, but without an altar, and the new Jerusalem will be revealed to the world without the name of Yahweh. You breathe deeply. What Leo XIV seems to predict is a substitution, a temple without sacrifice, a faith without the cross, a Messiah without the Lamb. He speaks of a future in which Israel will be pressured to accept a reconstruction agreement for its temple, an agreement sponsored by an international coalition led by reformist Iranian forces and the ecumenical leadership of the Vatican. Peace in exchange for sacrifice. The altar, according to the letter, would be symbolic. No blood, no memory of the Exodus, no mention of sin. Only universal rituals aimed at interfaith unity with adjusted dates, shared offerings, and a new Torah rewritten by a global committee. Leo XIV refuses to call this faith. He gives it another name, the white abomination. They will come dressed in linen, with sweet words and gentle eyes. They will speak of peace, compassion, and tolerance, but they will deny the Lamb, and by doing so, they will crucify the name once again, not with nails, but with applause. Here the Pope makes his most personal confession. He recounts a recurring dream, a nightmare. In it, he walks through a futuristic Jerusalem, lit by screens and drones. The temple shines, but the sky is dark. As he approaches, he sees a crowd dancing, laughing, singing. But at the center of the altar is a vacant throne, a reserved place, and he hears a voice whisper, "The image will come, and it will be made of light." You feel a chill run down your spine. This prophecy points to something deeper, the rise of a false image, a modern idol, digital, alive, something or someone that will occupy that reserved throne and captivate the nations. Could it be a hologram, a messianic artificial intelligence, an avatar leader that speaks all languages and seduces all hearts? Leo XIV doesn't say. But he closes this section with a verse that cannot be ignored. "And it was granted to him to give breath to the image of the beast." Revelation 13:15. Now the weight falls squarely on you. This prophecy is not for theologians. It's for the people, for the attentive, for the awakened. If you've made it this far, understand. The question is not, will you believe? The question is, will you stay silent before continuing? Like this video if this message is confronting your spirit. Comment your city, because resistance begins with those who identify themselves. Share it with someone who needs to open their eyes. You feel that you're no longer the same since reading these words. As if a veil had been torn from your eyes, and now the world around you seems staged. As if the entire planet were running toward a stage, and you had seen before anyone else the hidden script behind the performance. Leo XIV was not just a theologian, he was a watchman, a man who saw the spiritual backstage of history and tried to warn the world before it was too late. And at the center of this revelation, a mysterious figure emerges, the peacemaker of the East. The letter mentions this name 3 times, each time wrapped in darkness. He will come without an army, but will conquer kings. He will have Persian blood, a Hebrew face, and a Western tongue. He will make it rain over Israel and bloom over Persia, and will be hailed as the true son of peace. Or could this be the Antichrist? The text never declares it outright, but everything points to a hybrid man, born between cultures, raised to unite opposing worlds. According to Leo XIV, he will be presented as a diplomat, a genius of reconciliation. But behind his eloquence there will be another voice. His mouth will move the masses, but his words will be inspired by an ancient spirit, the same that once whispered to the kings of Babylon. Then the prophecy describes an event that has not yet happened, but feels imminent, an attack on the Al-Aqsa Mosque in Jerusalem. A sacred artifact, long lost, is miraculously found, and a bold plan to rebuild the temple, not as a symbol of Judaism, but as a spiritual capital for a unified humanity. You tremble as you realize what this implies. The temple prophesied by Isaiah, a house of prayer for all nations, will be taken literally, but emptied of its most vital element, the blood of the Lamb. It will be a temple without redemption. And the peacemaker, according to Leo XIV, will be the chief mediator between Iran, Israel, and the Vatican, 3 forces that today seem irreconcilable, but will unite under one banner, under one promise: universal peace. But at what cost? There will be peace, yes, but it will be the peace of silence, the peace where no one can say anymore, Jesus is the Son, the peace where the cross will be called a symbol of intolerance. Leo XIV, Letter of Black Dew, Section 7. And now you grasp the heart of the message. This prophecy isn't just about what will happen out there, it's about what will happen inside of you. Because soon all people will be called to choose inclusion or separation, peace or faithfulness, temple or cross. but what looks like light may be darkness in disguise. Are you ready to see what lies beyond the promise? Now you see, not just the events, but the intentions behind them, as if a curtain had been torn away from the world stage and you finally saw the strings, the manipulators, the backstage, the scripts written not by men, but by principalities. In the seventh seal of Leo XIV's prophecy, there are no more metaphors. There are names, places, and a direct warning to anyone who dares read it. If this scroll is opened before its time, the hounds will rise. But if it is read in fasting and weeping, the Lamb will seal it in the hearts of the pure. Leo XIV, section of 8. You choose to keep reading, even knowing that every new line might bring down fire. At this point in the manuscript, the Pope describes a terrible vision, a night scene, desolate, where the golden domes of Jerusalem are burning in silence. No screams, no sirens, only the echo of chants in ancient tongues and the twisted blast of a trumpet, as if the heavens themselves were suffocating. In the center of the city, he sees a man in white robes, applauded by representatives of every religion. Muslims, rabbis, Buddhist monks, priests, pastors, all bowed before him. There is no cross, there is no menorah, there is no Quran. Only a new symbol, projected above the altar, an eye surrounded by 7 rays of light. The Pope writes, horrified, "They will call him the ambassador of eternal peace, but he will be the heir of the ancient deception, and his voice will calm the nations, while erasing names from the book." Yes, Leo XIV believed that this peacemaker would in truth be the precursor to the beast, and the setting for his rise would not be total chaos, but a manufactured order. A world exhausted by conflict, traumatized by religious wars and economic breakdown, desperate for stability, would accept anyone who offered redemption without repentance. But the price would be the soul. You remember Jesus' own words in John 5:43, "I have come in my Father's name, and you do not receive me. If another comes in his own name, you will receive him." This other, according to Leo XIV, will not appear to the world as a tyrant. He will be seen as a liberator. He will be praised for uniting Iran and Israel. He will be proclaimed by the Vatican as a sign of the prophesied times of peace. And many will say, "Now yes, God is among us, but the God who stands there will not be the Holy One of Israel." The prophecy ends this section with a chilling whisper. The first throne was Solomon's, the second was Caesar's, the third will be digital. Leo XIV. Now you understand why this letter was buried, why the name Leo XIV was erased, why darkness is so afraid that you might read it, because if the prophecy is true, then the beast will not come as a demon, he will come as a savior. The Vatican tried to erase it, but it failed, because copies of the Letter of Black Dew escaped its control, and one of them ended up in a secret monastery near Haifa, where Messianic monks hid the text for 40 years. In 2071, a Christian archaeologist discovered this version hidden inside a false wall while restoring the abandoned cloister. There were no signs of mold, no moisture, no wear. It was as if time itself had preserved the document for a reason. And this version, this one was longer. It contained passages not found in the earlier leaks. It seemed to be an expanded edition, more detailed and even more alarming. One section read, "Peace will be signed at the 9th hour of a solar cycle. Israel and Iran will share the temple, and Rome will officiate." The meaning is clear. The temple in Jerusalem will be rebuilt. But it won't be Jewish, and it won't be Muslim. It will be shared, each side with its own altar, its own festivals, its own doctrines, a so-called model of coexistence. This idea had already been circulating among religious and political thinkers for decades, but the prophecy says, when this happens, it will not mark the beginning of a solution, but the spark that ignites the collapse. Leo XIV states, "When the altar is divided, the spirit will be withdrawn, and what remains will be only ceremony without presence." Modern theologians tried to reinterpret this as a critique of anti-traditional ecumenism, but the context is clear. He wasn't speaking of interfaith dialogue. He was describing a complete spiritual inversion. The temple won't simply exclude the name of Christ. It will be used to rebuild Babel. Attached to the letter were classified Vatican reports, internal files written by agents of the Holy See. They mentioned secret meetings with moderate Iranian representatives where they discussed a new Torah purged of divisive elements. These elements were the exclusive promises to Israel, the messianic prophecies, the themes of judgment, possession, and sacrifice. In other words, the Bible would be re-edited. Leo XIV did not just oppose this, he publicly denounced it before the College of Cardinals, calling the project a pact with the enemy. After that, he disappeared for 2 weeks. When he returned, he was silent, weakened, and his eyes looked like someone who had seen something he never wished to see. In the following months, he began writing the complete prophecy, but it was already too late. Vatican diplomats had already begun the process. An alliance with Iran was already underway, mediated by Rome. Its goal, to prevent a war. Its cost, the truth. The letter warns, when peace costs you your identity, it is not peace, it is submission. Now you understand, this prophecy is not about the end of the world in explosions. It is about the end of faith as we know it, a world in which everyone will be allowed to worship, but no one will be allowed to say, Jesus is the only way. This is the world being built, quietly, subtly, and perhaps you're already living in it without even knowing. The last known records of Leo XIV were not found in Rome. They surfaced in 2084 during an independent investigation led by a group of former Swiss Guard agents who had resigned from the church after a series of mysterious disappearances within the Vatican. The documents came from an unexpected source, a locked vault beneath the ancient monastery of St. Benedict in Bavaria. There they found the Pope's personal diaries, never before revealed. Manuscripts written in unstable Latin handwriting, indicating that they were composed during his final days, isolated, watched, threatened, and in these pages Leo XIII does not speak as a mystic. He does not write like a theologian. He writes like a man who has seen too much. One of the most devastating entries reads, "What began as diplomacy has become surrender. They signed, they negotiated, they gave in. Israel accepted the new temple, Iran accepted the new Torah, and Rome blessed it all." He refers here to what would later become known as the Mizpah Accord, a trilateral agreement secretly signed between representatives of Israel, Iran, and the Vatican. Although never officially acknowledged, its existence was confirmed through leaked documents and correlated geopolitical data between 2051 and 2062. The original draft of the agreement included the construction of a temple of human fraternity on the former Temple Mount, the suspension of any exclusive religious claims, the replacement of the concept of a chosen people with a new identity, spiritually conscious humanity. This last point is what most broke the Pope's heart. He writes, "Once again, the serpent has offered the fruit, and they have accepted it. They chose knowledge without obedience, and rejected the Lamb." This section draws a direct parallel to the fall in Eden. According to Leo XIV, this new global spiritual system is not something new. It is something ancient, a repetition, the return of Babel, but now under the blessing of the most powerful religious leaders on earth. Another document attached to the diary shows a calendar. Several dates are marked in red. One stands out, March 21st, 2094. Beside it, the Pope writes just one line, "Entry of the peacemaker into the temple." You remember back in chapter 6, Leo XIV spoke of this man, the diplomat, the reconciler, the symbol of unity. Now it is clear he will be enthroned in the temple, publicly, officially, globally, as the highest spiritual authority on earth. And the Pope warns, on that same day the heavens will tremble, and the veil will be torn again, not in the temple, but in the hearts of the faithful. The prophecy calls that moment the Great Divide, the final line separating those who accept the new system from those who will be hunted down. You begin to understand something deeper. This is no longer just prophecy. It is a blueprint, a plan in progress. What once sounded like dark fiction now has names, dates, and witnesses, and the question that remains is, the final pages of Leo XIV's diary are sharp. There's no more room for ambiguity. He doesn't write as a shepherd or prophet now, but as an analyst closing an intelligence report. He lays out in exact detail what he believes will occur in the final stages of the plan involving Iran, Israel, and the Vatican. According to him, the so-called peacemaker will be officially enthroned in Jerusalem during a global event. With political, religious, and technological representatives in attendance, the newly rebuilt temple will be presented as the definitive symbol of global reconciliation. The project's official name, Spiritual Center for Unified Humanity. The event will be broadcast worldwide, and at that moment, says the Pope, the global spiritual system will be activated. The structure of the temple will include 3 internal zones, one dedicated to Jewish tradition, one to Islam, and a third for interfaith ceremonies, but none will contain any Christian symbols. The cross will be considered a symbol of historical division and will be excluded by consensus. The worship in this temple will be based on so-called universal values: equality, peace, global consciousness, collective spiritual experience. From that moment on, any religious expression that claims exclusivity, especially traditional Christianity, will be reclassified as obsolete, intolerant, or radical. Leo XIV warns that a digital spiritual registry will be created. Believers will have to confirm their adherence to the new model of faith through an integrated platform. Those who comply will receive a seal of inclusion. Those who do not will face restrictions. And no, they won't come through persecution at first. They will come through practical limitations: loss of access to certain digital platforms or financial systems, denial of public benefits, labeling as a high-risk ideological group, disqualification from leadership, education, and public service roles. The system will be self-regulating. There won't be mobs or inquisitions. There will be protocols. Society itself, desiring peace, comfort, and unity, will isolate those who refuse to adapt. The Pope writes, "The most dangerous part will not be the force. It will be the silent consent. The majority will not realize they have abandoned the faith. They will believe they are evolving, but in practice they will have denied the centrality of Christ." The final paragraphs are cold, dry, like conclusions in a final report. The temple will soon be activated. The spiritual system will be global. Christ will be replaced by neutrality. The cross will be removed from public centers. The scriptures will be rewritten. And the closing line comes like a blade: those who do not accept will be excluded, not by force, but by the system. That is the last entry in the document. After that, no further records of Leo XIV were ever found. If you've come this far, then you now know. This is not a theory. It is a system in motion. If you've made it this far, you understand what is being constructed. This is not about the end of the world through war. It is about the end of faith as we know it. A world in which everyone will be allowed to worship, but no one will be allowed to declare that Jesus is the only way. And the most terrifying part, this world is already being built, quietly, strategically. Maybe you're already inside it without realizing. According to the documents, the final writings of Leo XIV were not stored in the Vatican. They emerged decades later in 2084 during an investigation by former Vatican insiders. Their source, a sealed vault hidden beneath the monastery of St. Benedict in Bavaria. There, inside a lead-lined box, were the private diaries of the Pope, never released, never published. They contained his final thoughts, final warnings, and one final revelation. He writes, "What began as negotiation ended in surrender. They didn't fight, they agreed. Israel accepted the new temple. Iran accepted the new Torah. Rome gave the final blessing." He is referring to the Mizpah Accord, the secret trilateral covenant between Israel, Iran, and the Vatican. It was never officially announced, but its evidence is everywhere, in leaked memos, satellite reports, and international summit transcripts between 2051 and 2062. What did the accord include? The construction of the Temple of Human Fraternity on the ancient Temple Mount, the banning of any narrative that declares one exclusive truth, the replacement of the word chosen with spiritually awakened. And that was the dagger for Leo XIII. He writes, "The serpent has offered the fruit once more, and again they said yes. They chose universal enlightenment and rejected the Lamb." This connects directly to the fall in Eden. According to Leo XIV, the New World religion is not innovation, it is repetition. It is Babel reborn, this time with the approval of church leaders. In one annex, a timeline appears. Several dates are marked, but one is underlined in red, March 21st, 2094. Beside it, only this note, enthronement of the peacemaker in the temple. You now understand. This man, the charismatic hybrid figure, will be enthroned not as a king of nations, but as the high priest of a new world order. Anointed, televised, adored, and the Pope warns, on that day the heavens will shake. The veil will be torn again, not in the temple, but in the hearts of the faithful. According to the prophecy, this event will draw a line in the sand. It will be the final division, those who comply with the system and those who are rejected by it. Leo XIV saw it not as a theory, but as a machine already running. Everything he described had names, had documents, had signatures. And the last question remains, when this man rises, will you recognize him? The final pages of Leo XIV's diary are different. There's no mysticism, no poetry, only cold, surgical clarity, as if he were completing a classified briefing for the few who still dare to see. He no longer writes as a shepherd, but as a strategist of faith under siege. What he reveals is the activation plan of the system involving Iran, Israel, and the Vatican. He writes, "The peacemaker will be enthroned in Jerusalem during a global event with political and religious leaders present. It will be called the Day of Final Reconciliation, and it will be streamed to all nations. At this event, the reconstructed temple will be officially presented, but not as a house of prayer for one people, as a spiritual headquarters for all humanity. Its name, the Spiritual Center of Unified Humanity. The Pope outlines its structure, 3 internal wings, one for Jewish rituals, cleansed of messianic content, one for Islamic rites, centered on unity over revelation, one interfaith chamber where all doctrines are fused into shared truths. In none of them will there be a cross. Christ will not be mentioned. The Eucharist will be abolished. The Lamb removed. Instead, the faith will be based on values, universal dignity, peace without conversion, shared divine consciousness. At that moment, any faith system that refuses to adapt will be digitally flagged. A global faith identification system will be implemented. Leo XIV writes, "Each citizen will confirm their spiritual alignment through a universal platform. Those who comply will receive the seal of inclusion. Those who don't will be flagged as outliers. The consequences won't come by violence, but by exclusion. Restricted access to social and banking networks, loss of civil privileges, suspension of educational and public service roles, redefinition as high-risk ideological profiles. And worst of all, the silence of the masses will normalize it." Leo XIV concludes, "The greatest weapon will not be fear, it will be comfort. People will choose peace, even if it means crucifying the truth again." He warns that churches will not be burned. They will be redecorated. The cross will not be banned. It will be called divisive art and moved into museums. The Bible will not be outlawed, it will be rewritten. A new edition will emerge, a global scripture, approved by a council of interreligious scholars. Its content? No blood, no judgment, no exclusivity, no redemption, just a spiritual guidebook for moral coexistence. Leo XIV's final sentence is burned into the last page. He who does not accept will not be destroyed. He will be forgotten, not erased by fire, but by silence. And that is how it ends. No signature, no amen, just a seal, a lamb pierced by light, surrounded by 7 stars. If you've read to the end, you know. This prophecy was not just written for the world, it was written for you. Because in the age of false peace, only the remnant will still remember the cross. Only the remnant will still whisper, Jesus is the Lamb. Like this video, if the message struck your soul, comment the city you're watching from, so the remnant can find one another. Share this prophecy with those who still have ears to hear. The age of silence is ending. Let the witnesses rise.